Be respectful of everyone's time. We will go ahead and get started. This is Jordan Patterson, and I'm the Special Programs Manager at IndyGo. I want to welcome and thank you all for joining our virtual public information meeting on the Blue Line Rapid Transit Project. Yes, the Blue Line Rapid Transit Project is still happening and is moving toward the 90% design phase. Last August, IndyGo staff announced they needed more time to evaluate the design due to increased pricing, inflation, and stormwater requirements. The original cost estimate for the project in 2019, that was pre-COVID, a different day, when the Blue Line was at 30% design, was $220 million. Those cost estimates literally ballooned to more than $500 million. So over the last few years, we've been working diligently with our project partners and stakeholders to determine the best path forward on how we could preserve the preferred design for the BRT project along the corridor. And based on the results of this year-long process, the agency has decided to progress the Blue Line design, maintaining the transit components that riders have come to love with the Red Line and will experience on our next rapid transit project under construction, the Purple Line. This evening, we will share a project overview. We recognize that some of you are new to learning about the Blue Line, and some of you, it's been a while. You've slept since last August, and you would like a little refresher. And in this meeting, our agenda is very simple. We're going to have a presentation where we cover that overview and then cover what has changed. And then we will do a Q&A session. We also have with us on this call some IndyGo experts from our capital projects, public affairs and government affairs departments, as well as WSP, and they will help with Q&A. I do have a few quick housekeeping items to pass along, and then we'll get started with our presentation. So this meeting is being recorded. For those who are from Facebook Live, you will be able to access the link and watch it actually in the Zoom today. To streamline our meeting flow, we're going to ask that you submit your questions in the Q&A feature. And this feature can be found by hovering your mouse over the Zoom window. And you'll see a little toolbar with a prominent Q&A button. Just click that button, and then it will allow you to submit questions. Please note that there will be no chat feature used tonight, but attendees are welcome to submit questions at any time during the meeting. You could see some of our team members answering in real time, but oral responses will be given during the Q&A session after the meeting presentation. I also have to say that we would ask that everyone abide by our public meeting decorum, which simply put is all about respecting others, regardless of who they are or their opinions they hold. And with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to today's presenter, the Matt Duffy, who is our Capital Projects Manager.
Thanks, Jordan. That was a fantastic introduction. Really set the stage here. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, I can hear you just
all right,
fine.
Wonderful. If you wouldn't mind moving on to the next slide. As Jordan mentioned, I'm Matt Duffy, the project manager for the Blue Line, and I work in the capital projects department here at IndyGo. As Jordan mentioned, it's kind of been a while since we've talked about the Blue Line, so we're going to start with overview on the project, and then we'll kind of drill into some more details as we move along. So project overview, again, this is an east-west proposed BRT line that will upgrade the existing Route 8, largely upgrade the existing Route 8. 24.5 miles long, running from the airport on the west end through downtown and then all the way to Cumberland on the east side, pretty much to where the Mire is in Cumberland. There are proposed 33 stations, and that includes some curbside pairs in the downtown area, 58% dedicated lanes, and all the dedicated lane percentage is along Washington Street. Project cost $370 to $390 million. As Jordan mentioned, that we were able to reduce that from the over $500 million cost estimate that we got at 60%. Estimating 25 to 35% reduction in travel time from end to end, which is really exciting for this route. It's IndyGo's second highest ridership route behind the Red Line, and a key component of IndyGo's transit system. I want to mention here while we're looking at this, the project corridor, and I'll discuss it in more detail as we move on. But the segment 1 portion, the airport in the green on the left side of the screen, that is a change from what was shown previously. I think it's been discussed a little bit over the last year or so, but we'll highlight that move off of Washington Street onto I-70, which will be express to the airport. The segments, this is the project team's way of dividing up and basically differentiating between different areas of the project that have similar characteristics. So airport is segment 1, and you'll see me reference this throughout the presentation. Segment 2 near west, which is essentially Holt to the White River. Downtown, segment 3, which is from West Street to Southeastern. Segment 4 is Irvington area, so Southeastern, pretty much to 465. It's not exactly what's shown on the map, but it's easier to reference it that way. And then segment 5 is we're calling the Cumberland segment. You could move to the next slide, please, Jordan.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
There we go. Thank you. Station details. Oh, we're back to overview. There we go. Thanks. 33 new BRT stations. The stations are very similar to the red and purple line BRT stations. We made some small changes to the purple line stations, which haven't quite taken shape yet, if you've seen the 38th Street corridor, but are about to. Really small minor changes to some of the material selection, but overall look and feel will be the same. Covered waiting area, level boarding, ticket vending machines, real-time arrival signs, security cameras, snow melts, and of course, ADA accessible. Stations are spaced about every half a mile apart, and all the stations along the project, with the exception of the western terminus at the airport, the eastern terminus, which is off-street, adjacent to the Meyer, and the downtown transit center, all will be center except for the Washington and Maryland one-way pairs, which will be curbside, because those are on existing one-way streets. Next slide, please. So as we know, this project is more than just improving transit. It's also improving the infrastructure that the transit operates on. Most importantly and critical to IndyGo is how people are accessing transit. So we know that the transit trip doesn't just begin and end when somebody gets on or off the bus. It's accessing that transit trip. So 9 miles of sidewalk, bike parking at many of the stations, crosswalks, a small multi-use path on the west end in segment 2. I'll talk about that again when I talk about the segment 1 project. I'll zoom into segment 1 specifically. Upgraded curb ramps, pavement resurfacing and rehabilitation, and 57 new or upgraded traffic signals. And I should say that all the traffic signals that the Blue Line will operate on will have transit signal priority as well. Next slide, please, Jordan. Lane configurations. The 4 pictures shown here are the 4 different running way configurations that the Blue Line will utilize to improve transit speed and reliability. So starting from the top left, the median running exclusive lanes. This is where a bus operates in the center of the road in each direction with general traffic on the outside. And if somebody needs to make a left turn between permitted locations, they need to go down to the next signalized access point, make a U-turn, and then make a right turn again. If you're familiar with Meridian Street, that is what this configuration looks like. Bottom left, single bi-directional lane. This is not generally preferred, but still like to have dedicated lanes versus not. So in isolated, very small locations on the Blue Line, we'll be using a bi-directional lane. That's where a bus operates in both directions in the single lane, but not at the same time. That's the trick there. top right is curbside BAT. That's where a bus uses the right lane that can go straight through, or right turning vehicles can use that to access driveways or cross streets. It's known as a BAT, which stands for Business Access Transit, or bus and turns. And then the bottom right picture is the left lane running BAT. Very similar to right lane BAT, except you're just flipping which lane is used. And then in the left lane configuration, drivers can move through the bus lane and then into the left turn lane in order to make a turn. Next slide, please. Now here's those lane configurations throughout the whole corridor. Starting from west to east, so the airport section utilizing I-70 and mixed traffic. So we're not proposing any dedicated lanes along I-70. And then moving into segment 2 is mostly left lane BAT, and then there's small sections of bidirectional configuration there. Both of them are just underneath the railroad bridges where it's really tight existing right away and tough to get a bus lane in each direction there. In the section closest to downtown in front of the zoo, that left lane is utilized for dedicated center running. Downtown left and right BAT, switching between those because of the one-way pairs of Maryland and Washington. And then in the east end, the bulk of the corridor is dedicated center running. So that left transit lane configuration with the outside lane being for general traffic. And then the last segment is mostly left lane BAT, where there is, it's wide enough for an existing left turn lane, and therefore it's being maintained with some access management. And the very end is a small section of mixed traffic to get to the terminus. Next slide, please. Segment 1. So I mentioned the change from Washington Street. So the lane configuration is mostly mixed traffic, is all mixed traffic until you get onto Washington Street. So from the airport, taking the access roads to I-70 and then exiting at Holt Road and going up to Washington Street there. So why the change? There's several reasons, and I think that all kind of point to using I-70. First reason is that it reduces the upfront capital cost of the project in an area that had probably the lowest transit usage and transit beneficial land uses. And so that was one reason. It reduced quite a bit of capital upfront cost on the project and allowed us to maintain using the same FTA grant that is being pursued on this project. Reduces operating costs, both on an annual basis and the number of vehicles that are required. So that ties back to the capital cost of the vehicles that are needed to operate this segment. It also provides faster service to the airport, which I think is a goal that everyone shares, to be able to move visitors and other people that live in the city to and from downtown and other parts of the city as well. The city of Indianapolis has committed to building a project west of Washington Street that will improve the infrastructure. And IndyGo also plans to operate some form of transit within this section that was served by or is currently served by the Route 8. And those details are still being fleshed out, but the city is progressing the project west of Holt, and then east of Holt is where the Blue Line, or IndyGo, is progressing infrastructure improvements. Next slide, please. Segment 2, again, this is the portion from Holt Road essentially to the White River. Utilizes left lane running BAT configuration, which is a configuration that does provide benefit between transit service and maintaining existing access to properties and residences between the dedicated U-turn locations. Bidirectional, as I mentioned, underneath the railroad bridges, where we've got a pinch down between those existing bridge abutments. Some of the outreach takeaways, working with the Central Green development property station location. the Indianapolis Zoo and how to access the zoo property with the station siting, and then some traffic impacts at Harding and White River. Next slide, please. Segment 3, downtown, mostly operating on the one-way pairs of Washington and Maryland. Left lane and right lane BAT with a little bit of mixed traffic. Some of the outreach takeaways here, working on station siting near the Idle Jorg and near the Idle Jorg. And then the station location was shifted from East Street over to Park. That's kind of an older change that was pre-60%, but still worth mentioning again. And then coordination with I-65 and I-70 as a part of the North Split project. And then lastly, coordinating with the Elevator Hill development as well with the Southeastern station. Next slide, please. Segment 4, median running exclusive lanes. Bus lane in each direction on the inside, and then general traffic on the outside, utilizing signalized access points to turn around in between those points. We have looked at what the distances are for U-turns here and have added signals in some locations, which also serves as a benefit to provide pedestrian crossings between signalized and other pedestrian crossing locations. We know that that pedestrian safety is incredibly important here and on all streets really, but that's a focus as design develops. We're working on preserving the Irvington streetscape where that exists, coordinated with the Shepherd Center on access to that property, and then work to avoid historic property impacts throughout this part of the project. As far as traffic congestion goes, there's been several intersections that we worked with the city to agree on improvements to meet the traffic metrics that have been set forth as a part of the project for level of service, which is a term for traffic analysis. And so we've worked through those specific intersections on remedying those concerns. Next slide, please. Segment 5, again, pretty much from 465 to the east. Left lane BAT is the primary configuration with a little bit of mixed traffic. Discussion points here, coordination with INDOT, where they have a resurfacing project planned for the portion that INDOT owns, which is pretty much 465 to the east. They're planning on resurfacing the entire width of the project. And then the east terminus, which is located at a property just west of Meyer on the east end in Cumberland. Next slide, please. So now I'm going to talk about some of the details, the big cost drivers that allowed us to bring this project back into a possibility, I guess. And the first one is the decision to switch from electric buses to diesel hybrid buses. There was federal legislation that was passed in 2021 that restricted the purchase of BYD, all electric buses with federal money. Again, those are the buses that were purchased and utilized on the red line and will be utilized on the purple line as well. The other alternative to that for an electric bus is another vendor that has significantly lower range, and even more problematic is the size of this corridor, which meant we had to purchase essentially twice as many buses to operate it, which put the costs up at upwards of $130 million. Projecting the shift to diesel hybrid will cost around $35 million. This still allows IndyGo to reach clean fleet goals, lowering carbon footprint, still aligns with the Small Starts Grant Agreement, and we also can eliminate the capital cost of putting in inductive charging as a part of the project as well. All that being said, I think it would still be IndyGo's goal to investigate a zero-emission vehicle option at some point in the future. Generally, buses last 7 to 12 years or more, at which point we can consider what other vehicle propulsion technologies are out there and how we can achieve that goal of a zero emission fleet. Next slide, please. Stormwater design proved to be much more of a critical component of the project than I think anybody envisioned. I think that's whenever I tell people I work at IndyGo, I talk about building the Blue Line and talk about what the project is, right? It's a transit project to improve transit. And they say, well, it's so difficult about putting bus lanes down. You don't realize the challenges and the complications that go along with that. So the project needs to meet the cities and the citizens energy group stormwater standards. So we're largely talking about segment 2, again, near west of downtown, segment 4, Irvington area. The existing stormwater system is what's called a combined system. So sewer or dirty water and stormwater mixed together and all go to the same location. And part of this project was analyzing whether we could utilize that existing system or whether we'd have to build a new separated storm system. And I think that's definitely the cities and citizens' ideal scenario, and that is something that we'll be able to do as a part of the project. But the part of the reason why 60% came in so much higher is we did not account for the condition, the capacity of the existing infrastructure, and realized that being able to tie into the existing system was not feasible in these sections of the project. So over the last year, I've been working with the city and with citizens to find a solution that is more feasible in the urban constrained corridor of Washington Street. So we were able to still separate the system. That is still the plan. And we were able to do that by consolidating some of the detention sites and also some of the existing crossing combined sewer locations were left separated or not tying into the proposed system. And so we feel confident now that we're able to move forward with this approach. And the reason that stormwater, and I kind of glossed over that, but the reason that this is an important part of the project is because when we're adding in bus lanes in the center of the road, there's only so much water during storm events that is allowed to sit on the only lane of traffic in each direction. And so the water needs to be able to get off the street faster and into the system faster, which is the reason that we've had all this complication with the stormwater design. So worked hard with our partners, city and citizens, to be able to find a solution to move this forward, and excited to say that we're at a point where we feel like we can do that. Next slide, please. Budget and funding. So on the funding side, we're pursuing a FTA Small Starts grant, and we're requesting $150 million, which is the most that you can request for the Small Starts grant. Other federal grants are about $36 million, and then the rest of the project is funded locally, $185.5 million. Project budget, $370 to $390. I've broken it down there into some of the key categories: infrastructure, $238. That includes, pavement, all the pedestrian improvements that we mentioned, traffic signals, stormwater is included in that. Stations, BRT stations are $51 million, vehicles $30 million, and then project development costs, right-of-way finance, are about $50 million. And the reason that we're leaving a range on that is 370 to 390 is because we're updating cost estimates as we move forward. We're still refining the design and still moving it forward so that some of the uncertainties can translate into knowns, and we can narrow in on what a proposed project cost might be. Next slide, please. So the current status, we are progressing 60% design. We sent out notification to property owners, or will be sending out notification to property owners regarding right-of-way acquisition. And I'll talk about that a little more in the next slide. And the timeline from now through when we anticipate to start revenue service, 90% design completed this fall, 2023, approved. We're anticipating approval of NEPA by fall of 2023 as well, at which point we'll start the property acquisition process. Design completed by spring of 2024, construction 2024, 2026, and then hoping for revenue service in 2027. Next slide, please. So the property acquisition process, so the overall process has started now, although the actual offers cannot happen until NEPA is approved. So that's why I say the process has started, but offers have not been made yet. So the reason we need right-of-way acquisition is to construct the project as designed. Largely, this is for small slivers or portions of land where there's widening, such as station locations. I put the graphic here and highlighted in yellow where a temporary right-of-way is called out. And there's two different kinds of acquisitions, temporary and permanent. And temporary is only needed for a short time to build whatever infrastructure is adjacent to it. So sometimes it's a sidewalk or something, and then just grading back to wherever the property meets. Permanent is where you've got the purchase of private property for permanent public use. So just the difference is temporary turns back over to the property owner at the end of the project, and permanent, the property turns over to the public entity. So for the blue line, impacted property owners should be receiving a letter prior to appraisal starting with contact information to discuss the process. And we've got a project team available to discuss in further detail if needed, and you can always reach out to us one-on-one if you have a property that you're interested in or wondering about status or anything like that. Next slide, please. So next stop for the project, I mentioned it's 90% design plans. That's the big push right now. We're also progressing NEPA, which is another critical step on the project. Continue to coordinate with partner agencies, progress the design of all the infrastructure elements that I mentioned. We'll be updating the cost estimate as well. That'll come in with a 90% submittal. And some of the details about construction are really what need to be figured out next and then communicated out. So construction phasing, schedule, traffic impacts, we don't know. I mentioned the 2024, 2026. We don't know what part of the project will get constructed when, what construction phasing will look like, and access during construction, all really important critical steps of this project that we'll be figuring out and communicating out to everybody. So again, ongoing through construction, we'll be making sure to update the community as construction progresses. Next slide, please. Continued feedback. There's opportunities this week for open houses. And I think Jordan's got that on the next slide here. One-on-one meetings as requested are always open to discuss the project as needed and provide information as possible. We're looking for individual property or access circulation, hoping to, those are great areas of feedback and ways that we can incorporate that into the design or just work with you to understand what the built conditions will look like. And then how we can provide positive impacts to businesses during construction itself. For the overall layout of the project, station locations, where dedicated lanes are, those are considered finalized at this point, and moving forward with those in the proposed design. Next slide, please.
Thank you, Matt. And I'll actually talk about how everyone can stay engaged with this project. Matt, he just shared with us sort of feedback we are looking for. This was largely an informational meeting, but we will have some opportunities this week if you want to have one-on-one conversations, if you'd like to view the design plans, or if you'd like to provide some feedback. We will be right along the Blue Line tomorrow at IndyGo's West Campus, located at 1501 West Washington Street. There will be a noon to 2 open house style session, and then 5 to 7 p.m. There will be another one that we're offering. And then on Thursday of this week, we will be at the Shepherd Community Center, also along the future Blue Line from noon to 2, and then again from 5 to 7. Several ways to comment. If you would like to reach out to us for a one-on-one meeting or provide any sort of feedback, you could visit our contact form online at www.indigo.net/contact-us. We have our customer care center. You can submit a comment form at our customer care center desk located at the Julian Carson Transit Center, or feel free to chat with us this week at one of our open house opportunities. And then I always encourage people to check out the website. Everything that we've shared with you today, you can find those details on our website. We've got a 60% design interactive map, so you can see your area of interest in regards to the corridor project. We've got renderings, FAQs, our file archives, our old presentations. All of it is there. We want to be fully transparent about the process and how we've gotten here. And so I encourage you to check out our website, www.indigo.net/blueline. And with that being said, we are going to jump right into the Q&A session. I want to say thanks for everyone who's been on the call so far. I will say that with the Q&A session, we will be addressing questions that pertain to this project. So just keep that in mind. Many questions have been addressed in the chat, but I'm going to see what else is out there, and I'm going to pass them along to my team members as they come. John says, I like this change. I know business owners and residents were very worried it would limit crossing and access to Washington Street, but it sounds like he's pleased. There is a question about limits to left turns to businesses. How many blocks and miles will limit left turns to businesses? Or if we could frame the question as, what does business access look like along the Blue Line corridor?
Yeah, I can answer that, Jordan. So in the 5.6 mile section of Washington Street in Irvington, we're looking at probably around a quarter mile to a half mile or so between U-turn locations. So at any given point, you got to go a quarter mile down the road, quarter mile back to make a right turn, or if you get used to that movement, you could make your left turn ahead of time and right turn onto another street, if that's possible to access that business. So those are the two options, but we've added traffic signals to reduce that distance that somebody has to drive out of the way to be able to make that U-turn.
Thanks, Matt. Linda has a good question. She says, with full acknowledgement of the limitations, have there been any attempts to quantify the difference in air quality impacts to local neighbors with diesel instead of electric? Can anybody kind of speak to our commitment to clean feet, or if there has been any quantifications of diesel versus electric and the impacts to the community?
Not that I've been. Oh, go ahead, Jennifer. It's open.
Oh, sorry. I am home with the kid with COVID, so I'm not going to turn my screen on at the moment. But yeah, this is Jennifer Pierce, Chief Development Officer at IndyGo. We have, as part of our reporting to the Federal Transit Administration, we do assess environmental impacts of the project. So I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but yes, we are considering the difference and making sure that we meet, all of the requirements of the project and do the best we can to make that zero emission promise.
Thanks, Jennifer. Derek says, have tests with rub rail been conducted? How effective has rub rail been proven to be? I know that that was something that we implemented later on in the Red Line project. Can we speak to its effectiveness?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the rub rail has been added at all stations on the Red Line, planned for Purple Line, planned for Blue Line as well. And we're assessing the benefit right now. I think it's too soon to tell. Reduction in collisions between the vehicles and the platforms, or the ability for the operator to dock close to the platform. But something that we're continually trying to improve on, if I can speak for other colleagues at IndyGo. Jennifer, is there anything you want to add to that?
No, I think you covered it. Thank you.
All right, and we're moving right along. Okay, I maybe have missed the context to John's question. So John, if you want to rewrite your question, but he had a question about the Big Dig project. It says, did it take care of this issue? I'm assuming he's talking about the infrastructure underneath the ground.
I assume he's talking about the Citizens Tunnel.
Yeah,
would be my guess. Jennifer, were you gonna answer that?
Well, I was going to try to. Yes, that's what I was assuming as well, as it's related to the tunnel underneath the city of Indianapolis. I do not. I think citizens would probably be the best ones to answer that. I think it's outside of my capacity and my role. But you know, the simple answer is no. It's it's meeting different requirements. So our drainage needs to slow the release of water into nearby streams and waterways. And so we'll call it the Big Dig because I don't know what else to call it. I think that's a good name for it. The Big Dig doesn't necessarily do that. And that's probably about as far as I should go down the drainage route. So certainly citizens would have a better answer for that. I think solving a little bit different problems.
Thanks, Jennifer and Matt. Kyle says, thanks for the update. It's very insightful. When can we expect the next update? I will say that outreach is ongoing for this project as it has been, but the next big update will likely be at 90% design, which we anticipate, I believe, Q4 of this year or Q1 of next year. Is that right, Matt?
Yeah, that's right. I think Q4 this year, probably November, December, maybe January timeframe.
Yep. All right. And then make sure I understand Brian's question. 2019, your office suggested there could be construction blackouts of Blue Line construction on sensitive dates. He goes on to say that the Idle Jordan Museum will host large annual events the last weekend of June in 2024, 2025, and 2026, drawing large crowds. Construction. Oh, I lost it.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was answering it and I didn't realize it would disappear when I hit. I apologize, Jordan.
No, you're good.
I bet it's under the answered tab now.
Okay.
I can answer. This is Jennifer Pierce, Chief Development Officer with IndyGo. I apologize for doing that to Jordan. Yes, basically what I was saying was as we get closer to construction, we will reach out to key stakeholders regarding major events, and we will write into our contract certain restrictions. So as an example, the state fairgrounds for the Purple Line construction, we wrote into our contract that with the constructors that we could not be doing any work at the end of July, early August in that stretch of 38th Street. So absolutely, if you have something that is significant enough that it should change how construction occurs in front of the idle jorg, we will absolutely consider that and work with you to make sure that we avoid it. So we'll do that through phasing generally and say, so if your event, I think it said was in June, we would say perhaps no construction could occur during those 2 weeks in June. And, maybe they'd be working on the east side at that time, something like that. But yes, those conversations will happen as we get a little bit closer to construction. So probably early first quarter of next year.
Thank you, Jennifer. When signals are upgraded along the corridor, said that weird, along the corridor, will pedestrian jump signalization be implemented to ease conflict between vehicles turning right through the crosswalk?
Yeah, I think I know what they're asking about, leading pedestrian intervals, which are where there's the pedestrian phase comes on earlier than the vehicular phase, allowing them to get through or enter the intersection and be more visible to traffic. That is definitely something we're exploring and working with the city to see if it's possible to implement. I think it's also something that we're exploring how it relates to transit signal priority, where if there's a priority request, which means the bus is approaching, can we signal a pedestrian phase to allow people to access the station before the bus arrives? So something we're testing and going to play with and see if it's something that can be implemented. That's for the priority activation of the leading interval. But I think it's also something we're exploring in general along the corridor and working with the city to see if that's a possible implementation.
Okay. And then will this design allow for keeping the current street lights rather than replacing, or, are we getting new street lights as a part of this project along Washington Street?
Again, I wonder if they mean traffic signals or actual
I think they
street lights that illuminate the street.
I was assuming traffic signals, but Sue, if you want to clarify, you're more than welcome to.
I guess I could answer both ways. So for traffic signals, those are largely staying where they are. And then we're adding, as I mentioned, some signals along the corridor for either where there's a station going for a pedestrian crossing, or where we wanted to decrease the U-turn distance, or where we wanted to add a pedestrian crossing where there's not a station. But for street lights, those are not a part of the project and shouldn't be touched unless they are in the way of something or need to be relocated, in which case we would propose a new location for street lights. And hopefully that answers the question.
Excuse me. Doug says, will the hybrid buses be dedicated to the Blue Line or also available for use on our other rapid transit lines? And how does the mixed fleet impact operation considerations and maintenance costs of the different VRT lines? So addressing the first question, are the buses just dedicated to the Blue Line, these hybrid buses?
That's a good question. Jennifer, do you remember?
Yeah, I think the intent is to just use the hybrid vehicles on the Blue Line. The type of vehicle changes how we operate the line and how many buses we need and how many operators we need at certain times. And it's pretty complicated and, again, outside of my purview, but so I won't speak for our operations team, but there are reasons why it makes sense to have a dedicated fleet for a dedicated line. In this case, I suppose there are chances where we need an extra spare and one might for a short period be used on a different line, but the intent, as I understand it, is for the hybrid vehicles only to be on the Blue Line.
All right, we're moving right along. Okay. There's a question that says, was an embedded guide rail ever considered to ensure speedy and safe docking at stations? thinking of the rubber tired LRT in suburban Paris that uses a single guide rail.
Yeah, that's something that was explored as a part of the Red Line. And it was more of a solution that was mounted to the frame of the bus, and it was called a guide wheel. But it didn't prove to be as easy to utilize as they had hoped. And so that's the solution to move towards rub rail. And some of these more automated solutions are just more challenging to implement. It's unproven technology. There's a lot of testing and configuration that needs to go into it, and so we're confident in the rub rail approach right now to be able to dock safely and efficiently at the transit stations.
All right. Curtis says, how will the new buses accommodate bicyclists? Matt is an avid bicyclist, so he has an interest in this one as well.
Yeah.
Will there be front-mounted racks or internal racks similar to the Red Line? Do we know that yet?
Everything I've heard has indicated internal loading for bicyclists. Jennifer, have you heard anything otherwise?
Yes, yeah, that ties into one of the other questions that was asking if we might consider 40-foot buses, and I didn't see the answer that Carrie typed out, but one of the reasons that we would prefer to have 60-foot buses is so that we can have those internal bike racks. We also want left side boarding, which is having a left side door in a 40-foot bus is a little bit more complicated.
All right, and it looks like Jim provided some feedback about wanting to see some sort of local or express service on the historic East Side because of the spacing of buses. Thank you for that feedback, Jim. Did want to acknowledge that.
There's a question, Jordan, about the phasing that we might be able to answer. I don't know if Matt wants to chat about that one, or I can give that one a shot.
Up to you, Jennifer. I'm happy to answer it.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'll give it a shot. So John asked whether we considered doing the project in 2 phases, with one phase being from the transit center to the airport and then the route out to Cumberland. We did actually. So part of the work right initially when we first got that and a really high cost estimate that caused us to relook at things, we relooked at everything. And so we looked at different options for phasing the project, and there were various reasons why one segment was better than another, and none of them made enough sense to trim. Some of it had to do with how much cost. I mean, the one that made the most sense, I think, is the one that you're talking about here, where we build from the airport out to the downtown area or even out to Irvington and leave that portion on the far east side for a later phase. That didn't make a ton of sense because that was actually like the cheapest portion of the line. So it didn't cut enough cost for us. We also had concerns about ridership and achieving enough ridership to meet FTA standards. And then we also, if we do the airport line first, we're tacking on that I-70 piece, a lot of non-dedicated lanes. And we need to hit 50% dedicated lanes in order to qualify for the grant that we want under Federal Transit Administration. And so if we cut out dedicated lanes, we had the worry that we were going to fall below the 50%. So yes, it was considered, and there's probably a dozen more reasons that I haven't talked about, but for all of those reasons and others, we just felt like if we could get the project as a whole, that was what was originally envisioned. And that was what we wanted to try to do. So hope that answers your question. I don't know if you want to add anything, Matt.
I guess the only thing I'll add is there was just concern that if one gets built, another portion might not. And we felt like it was a disservice to the entire corridor and an unnecessary risk because the whole line deserves BRT, and how do you decide which goes first based on the competitiveness and some of the factors that Jennifer mentioned.
Brian, I'm seeing your question. I think a team member is addressing it, but if you wouldn't mind providing me your contact information, and I'll give that to the team so that they can connect with you directly. All right.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Jordan.
We're out of questions. Are there any more? All right, again, okay, we've got another that has been addressed. All right. I'll provide my email address if anyone wants to connect with me, and I will point you in the right direction. I know we had a representative from the Idle Jordan here who wanted some follow-up. Again, my name is Jordan Patterson. I'm a special programs manager. My email address is jpatterson@indigo.net. That's JPATTERSON@indigo.net. So if you have any questions, of course, you are welcome to chat with us at one of the opportunities we have this week. Again, we'll be at our West Campus located at 1501 West Washington Street tomorrow from noon to 2, and then again from 5 to 7 p.m. And then on Thursday, we will be at the Shepherd Center again from noon to 2 and then 5 to 7. But if you would like to get in contact with me, jpatterson@indigo.net. One last question I see. It says, will the station near East Washington and Ritter be located in front of George Julian School 57? I know we could probably pull that up on our design map. Give us 1 minute, Michelle. We can get that answer for you. Matt, are you able to pull that up, or shall I pull it up?
Sorry, I'm jumping off mute there. Yeah, I'm looking it up right now. See which side of the street this station is on. I think it's on the east leg of the intersection, so not right in front of the school.
Okay.
And Will, if you know, or Emily, feel free to jump in.
Yeah, that's correct.
Awesome. And again, tomorrow, the next day, you'll be able to talk to our team, get those specific questions answered, where we'll be able to kind of pull up the design and have a one-on-one, more personalized conversation. Thanks again for everyone being on this call. We are happy to say that the Blue Line is moving forward. We are moving our city forward with better transit and infrastructure improvements, and we are glad about it. Look forward to seeing you at one of our in-person meetings this week. Yep. Bye.